Imagine a quiet farm at the edge of a small American town. A woman in her 40s tends to her fields, her hands rough from years of hard work, her clothes plain, her face calm, almost ordinary. The neighbors see her as just another farmer, reserved, quiet, keeping to herself. No one knows that behind those wary eyes lives a legend. Not just any legend, but the most feared, the most respected Delta Force commander in U.S. military history. For years she has buried her past, building fences, milking cows, planting seeds. But one night, when bullies raid her farm, laughing, breaking, stealing, they unleash something they could never have imagined. What follows is not just about vengeance, but about resilience, humanity, and the unbreakable strength hidden inside a woman the world had forgotten. Stay with me until the end, because this isn't only a story of retaliation. It's the story of how one woman's past comes crashing into her present, and how she chooses to fight not with violence alone, but with the wisdom that made her the deadliest yet most compassionate commander of them all. The night was heavy with silence, broken only by the chirping of crickets. Margaret, Maggie. Cole wiped the sweat from her forehead as she stacked the last bale of hay inside the barn. To anyone passing by she looked like an ordinary woman in worn jeans and boots, her graying hair tied back in a loose braid. But inside her heart lived the weight of battles fought far away, in deserts and jungles where few dared to tread. She had left that life behind 15 years ago, walking away from medals, ceremonies, and classified missions, trading them for peace on her small farm. No one in town knew who she had been, and that was exactly how she wanted it. But trouble had a way of finding her. For weeks, a group of young men, local troublemakers with no purpose other than chaos, had been circling the outskirts of her land. They were loud, arrogant, and cruel, mocking her in the market, throwing bottles near her fence, laughing as they sped past on their motorcycles. Maggie ignored them, hoping silence would disarm their hunger for attention. But bullies often mistake silence for weakness. And tonight, under the cover of darkness, they came, not to scare, but to destroy. The sound of engines shattered the stillness as headlights swept across the barn. Maggie froze, her instincts awakening in an instant. Shadows danced across her land as trucks and bikes rolled in, carrying boys who thought themselves men. They jumped off yelling, smashing bottles, tearing at her fences, kicking over her water trough. One of them, tall and weary, grabbed a wooden plank and swung it against her barn door, laughing as the wood cracked. Another sprayed graffiti on her white farmhouse walls. They thought it was all a game. Maggie stepped out of the shadows, her calm presence startling them for a moment. She didn't shout. She didn't beg, she simply said, "Leave my land." Her voice was low, steady, the kind of voice that carries authority without volume, but they laughed at her. "What are you gonna do, old lady?" one of them mocked, tossing a glass bottle at her feet. The glass shattered, the shards catching the moonlight. For a brief second, Maggie felt the pull of her past. The weight of every weapon she had ever carried, every command she had ever given, every ambush she had ever survived. Her body remembered what her heart tried to bury. But she stood still. She told herself she would not go back. Not unless she had no choice. The bullies pushed further, dragging her livestock out of the pens, overturning feed binds, ripping apart the small life she had built. And then, one of them crossed the line. He grabbed the old photograph nailed to her barn wall. A photo of Maggie and her late daughter Emily. The one piece of her past she could never bury. He held it up and sneered. "Who's this? Your kid. She looks weak like you." He smirked as if he had found her deepest wound. In that moment, Maggie's silence shattered. She moved before they even realized what was happening. A hand that had once disarmed terrorists in seconds now twisted the bully's wrist until he dropped the photo. She caught it mid-air, tucking it back to her chest. Her eyes burned with something the boys had never seen before. Not anger, but focus, the terrifying calm of someone who has walked through fire and never flinched. "Leave, now." Her words carried weight, the kind that made even the cockiest among them hesitate. But ego was a dangerous thing. Instead of retreating, the leader of the group smirked. "Looks like the farmer has claws." He mocked, signaling to his friends. They surrounded her, thinking their numbers gave them power. They didn't know they had just cornered the deadliest Delta Force commander in history.